We just need to find my baby. First holiday abroad, saving up, looking so forward to this event. 3 DJs from everywhere, absolutely buzzing about it.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Jay's friend Lucy May Law, she raised the alarm after receiving a call from Jay, an apprentice bricklayer from Lancashire. That was around 8 a.m. on Monday, and he was saying that he was walking back to their accommodation in the south of the island and that he was thirsty and only had 1% battery. Now, how I understand it, he needed to be going south, but instead he was heading north, and he ended up heading a really long way. This was essentially the last proof of life from the 19-year-old, and it has one particularly ominous word in it, a word he uses: thirsty. Jay's phone died shortly after, and his last known location was traced to the Rural Detino area, a mountainous part of the island. That's also quite important to note. Mountainous, and you're thirsty. Mountainous, and we're struggling to find him. His parents and brother, according to the media, have both since flown out to help with the search. Now, it's also been made clear that the bus Jay was supposed to catch was due at 10 a.m., according to one of the last people to see him, and also that the bus stop was right beside the place that he was staying. A coffee shop owner who lived in the house above where he was staying also said that she saw him 20 minutes later and that he was walking in the wrong direction. This suggests A, that he didn't miss the bus, B, that he elected to walk back to his original hotel, right? He elected to walk instead of catch the bus, perhaps because of C, he'd run out of money. Easy enough to do, especially after a night of partying. I've done it. I'll tell you a little bit about that a little bit later. But what is the number one clue we've all missed? It's none of these things. What's the number one thing that is driving these events? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the many of you have subscribed. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do share it. Please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So Lucy May Law, a friend of Jay's, basically said that she was unhappy with the civil guard search. She's kind of come out as a sort of spokesperson for Jay. She seems to have galvanized the search. And she's basically said, we need British police. We need British police here. I just want to find my mate. He's been missing for 3 days. It's not looking good. And that was 3 days ago, almost 4 now. She also added, we feel as though it's down to us to find him and that we're doing more than the police. Now, good news in terms of that. Dog teams are on the scene. They are using dogs to search. And really, without a cell signal, olfactory signals are probably the next best thing. According to the BBC, on Friday, that's yesterday, search teams appeared to be methodically scouring a mountain road and focusing on a ravine before moving to a valley in the village of Muska. Dog teams were scouring an area near farm buildings for much of the day, while police and mountain rescue officials examined a steep patch of land between the apartment Mr. Slater had reportedly traveled to. Behind the apartment. Now, this is important. The operation carefully combed through dead palm trees, covering a river at the bottom of the hillside near to the property. Now, this river was the possible destination Jay was heading to because of thirst. We also know that he'd said that he'd cut his leg on a cactus, which is indicative that he left the road or path he was on at some point and elected to make some sort of cross-country journey.
So they were traveling somewhere?
I've managed to work out the broad strokes. It's fairly evident they were in the process of leaving before things went to pot.
The same applies to Jay. He was going somewhere when things went to pot. And how do things go to pot? Well, you go in the wrong direction. That's exactly what the witness said. She mentioned the bus when it was arriving and then saw him walking in the wrong direction. It's unfortunate that she didn't stop and tell him that. And that brings us to the number one clue we all missed. Any ideas what it is? What is the number one thing driving this situation? What is arguably the number one clue that really reveals what's really going on here and why? Well, I would say it's the age and inexperience of our missing person. Again, we've got quite a lot of experience in this area on this channel. Riley Strain was 22 when he died. That's just 3 years older than Jay. Kylie Rodney was 16, just 3 years younger. All three of these victims had the same thing in common, being very young. All three probably were under the influence at the time of their respective incidents. All three incidents happened relatively late at night, or in Slater's case, after a very late night, bringing sleep deprivation and poor decision choices, poor judgment into the picture, as a result of sleep deprivation. You also hear his mother referring to him as her baby, and so you kind of get the sense that, he is quite a young guy with, I think his father describes him as streetwise, but we're not on the street now. We out in the rural backwoods, right? That's a totally different ballgame. Besides age, Jay is an apprentice bricklayer who had to save up in order to be able to afford his trip. And I think that is perhaps another factor here. It could mean that he ran out of money while there. It was a 3-day event, maybe he drank more than he meant to, maybe bought people more drinks than he could afford to. It may be that he felt that he didn't have enough money for the bus, and so that's why he elected to walk. He may also have been too proud, like many of us, I'm sure, to admit to anyone that he'd run out of money. He's only 19. It's his first visit abroad on his own, according to his mother, and we all make mistakes when we're younger that we don't tend to make as older or more mature adults. And that brings us to a personal anecdote. When I was in my 20s and living in Bristol in the southwest of England, I was just about to start a new temp job and running critically low on money. But it was weekend, and I wanted to make something of the weekend and do something before starting kind of a job. So despite being severely cash-strapped, I nevertheless headed over to London to attend a concert known as The Flower. A lot of Irish musicians. It was a pretty big risk. I didn't have enough money for the train trip back, so I bought a ticket that got me some of the way. And so a few stations after Reading, I was actually caught and kicked off the train. I was able to draw my last £5 in my bank at the station, which again wasn't enough to get me home, but it could get me a few more stations further along. And this time, no one kicked me off the train, and I did get to my destination. But had I been kicked off, had that happened, I likely would have had to walk back as well, and a lot further than Jay did. Fortunately, it didn't happen, and I came out of that scrape, out of that kind of adventure, feeling like it was so worth it, but it could just as easily have gone badly wrong. I mean, imagine if I'd taken a wrong turn as well and headed in a certain direction at night. And so these are some of the travails of young folk when they're starting out. Some of us pay a price, some of us pay a very steep price. I've got a funny feeling Jay will be found tomorrow on Sunday, but time will tell one way or the other. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.